40 Indians were killed and more than 50 injured after a devastating fire broke out at dawn in a building housing around 195 migrant workers in southern Kuwait's Mangaf area. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called the incident saddening and has said that the Indian embassy in Kuwait is closely monitoring the situation. He has also announced relief of $2,400 to the families of killed Indian nationals from the Prime Minister Relief Fund and instructed the government to extend all possible assistance to the people. Prime Minister Modi also held a high-level meeting and has directed Minister of State for External Affairs KV Singh to leave for Kuwait. Taking to X, Singh wrote, and I'm quoting here, "As directed by Prime Minister Modi, we are immediately departing for Kuwait to provide assistance to those injured in the fire tragedy and to coordinate with local authorities for early repatriation of mortal remains of those who have died in this unfortunate incident."
We will do whatever possible help for the victims. The identification of the deceased has already started. We will start repatriation as soon as legal processes are over. Our team will stay there as long as our people need our help.
Identification हो जाएगा, वो Air Force के plane से यहाँ वापस अपने देश में ले जाएंगे. धन्यवाद.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to his Kuwaiti counterpart and said that he was assured that the incident would be fully investigated and that the responsibility would be fixed. The Kuwaiti Foreign Minister further said that they will review the situation more closely once India's minister reaches Kuwait. India's Ministry of External Affairs also released a statement confirming that the injured are receiving medical care in 5 governmental hospitals and that they are in a stable condition. The embassy is currently working with Kuwaiti authorities and the involved company to obtain comprehensive details. According to officials, the majority of those deceased were Indian nationals from Kerala and North Indian states. Meanwhile, the Tamil Nadu government has announced that it is probing whether Tamils were among those killed in the tragic fire incident. As per local media in Kuwait, the deadly fire engulfing the apartment building in Al Mangaf area could have been due to a gas leak. As per the Kuwait Times, reports indicated that it could have been a gas leak from the building's ground floor, though no official confirmation or reason has been given as of yet by the authorities, or the cause of the fire is also not known yet. Meanwhile, Kuwait's Minister of Public Works and Minister of Municipality have been suspended after the tragic incident. Well, for more on this, we have a principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibul, joining us on the phone line. Hi, Siddhant. Very good morning to you. Minister of State for External Affairs, KV Singh, has left for Kuwait. Meanwhile, Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke with his Kuwaiti counterpart. What else is the Indian government doing at the moment? And how do you see things moving forward after India's Minister, KV Singh, reaches Kuwait later today?
Well, New Delhi is closely watching and monitoring the situation. Now, the measures have been announced, including, of course, the Prime Minister announcing a relief of rupees 2 lakh to the families of the deceased from the Prime Minister's Relief Fund. Now, essentially, we saw that the Prime Minister yesterday evening chaired a high-level meeting where the Indian External Affairs Minister, the NSA, the MOS, Kirti Singh and other officials were present, including the Foreign Secretary. And the focus is to make sure that first those injured are given relief and assistance as soon as possible, which is underway. In fact, the Indian ambassador was at the hospital. We saw those visuals as well. And secondly, of course, repatriation of the bodies as well. But this is a tragedy that has particularly hit hard Kerala, and we have seen how the media has been reporting with visuals of the deceased as well, because substantial number of Indians were from the state. In fact, the Chief Minister yesterday wrote to the External Affairs Minister as well. So more details are awaited later today as the Indian delegation reaches Kuwait to take stock of the situation. And of course, this is a tragedy then not only for India but also for Kuwait. Remember, Indians form a substantial portion of the Kuwaiti population and also their workforce and have been instrumental in Kuwait's growth.
Right, Siddhant, I was just coming to that. Keeping in mind where Kuwait is concerned, 30% of the workforce are Indians, like you mentioned. Talk to us about what is that the Kuwait government is also doing at this point of time in terms of compensating, because the 40 lives out of the 49 were Indians and that they were mostly the blue-collared workers, also the laborers.
Well, essentially, we saw first yesterday the Kuwaiti Interior Minister was at the location and he has ordered an inquiry and also the arrest of the person who was taking charge of that building. In fact, that person is an Indian person. Now, secondly, we saw the statement of the Kuwaiti ambassador here in Delhi, who said that the Kuwaiti leadership has announced an inquiry and they are providing all assistance to the Indians affected and also support to the Indian team of Foreign Ministry, the External Affairs Ministry, traveling to Kuwait. So there are a number of measures which Kuwait has also announced, and for Kuwait, the Indian population plays an important role. Several nurses, several doctors are from India. So essentially, Kuwait understands the role of Indians in the country, and this is a tragedy that has shocked Kuwaitis as well. So no doubt they're going to take a strong action against those who are responsible for this tragedy.
Right, Siddhant, we'll of course be tracking this very closely on WION. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Well, we're also being joined by a correspondent, Siddharth MP, on the phone line. Hi, Siddharth. 40 Indians have lost their lives, most of them from Kerala and North Indian states. As of now, the Tamil Nadu government has launched a probe assessing if there were any Tamils who have also lost their lives in this unfortunate fire tragedy in Kuwait. Tell us more on that probe.
You're right. So prima facie information has given adequate clarity on the number of deceased, and of course it's also given some details that some of them are critical. But at this point in time, let me tell you that the Tamil Nadu government on its part has launched actually what is known as an inquiry from their side, and they're in touch with the Indian External Affairs Ministry and also the Indian Embassy in Kuwait, because this is a department known as Non-Resident Tamils Welfare Department under the government. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to ascertain through their contacts there and through India's representatives there in Kuwait on the, any details that they may have on the Indian residents, particularly from Tamil Nadu, who are affected by this tragedy, be it deceased ones or be it the injured ones. So they've also launched a helpline number so that anyone who has information can reach out to them and then give them the details either in India or, even abroad. They've launched a toll-free number so they can easily reach out and then provide the details in case there's anyone from the state. Because, this is a labor housing as far as initial information goes. A lot of blue-collared workers were living there. And, of course, they were living there in large numbers as far as reports from Kuwait are concerned. That's also one of the reasons for the tragedy. So, in such a case, it's hard to determine who was there and who wasn't there, because in such cases, most people work shifts and so on. So, at 6 in the morning, it's hard to determine who was there at the premises, who was not there at the premises, and so on. So, which is exactly why the Tamil Nadu government is right now trying to ascertain the presence of anyone from Tamil Nadu in this tragedy, either as those injured or either as those who have lost their lives. And at the same time, they're also trying to ensure that, in case there are anyone who are injured or there are anyone who needs help, they are provided the necessary help, be it hospitalization or treatment expenses or anything like that. If there's any emergency support they require, so there are efforts being undertaken to ensure that they get what they need right there and immediately without any delay. So this, of course, is the latest information we have. So far, it's not been ascertained whether there's anyone from Tamil Nadu there. But, of course, Keralites, there are multiple Keralites. So reports in Kerala media indicate that at least 10 of them have been identified there from multiple districts in Kerala. So their age groups, in fact, some of them are in their early 20s and some of the deceased are in their 50s. So, in fact, widespread damage actually is for the people from Kerala, because that's the maximum number that has been ascertained so far in terms of the people who have lost their lives. So that's the worst part of the tragedy, that for several families now in Kerala, it will be a time where they'll have to hope for getting the mortal remains back from Kuwait, which is what the Indian government is also working expressly towards, to ensure that the mortal remains can be brought back as soon as possible to actually provide whatever succor to the families there back in Kerala.
Right.
Raisha.
Right. Siddharth, Kerala's Chief Minister has also written to Dr. S. Jaishankar urging India's intervention in this matter. Do we have any information on the company that was housing these workers in poor conditions? A total of 195 blue-collar workers who were living in poor conditions in one building.
Yeah, so this is said to be a generic format there in that part of the world where, a lot of them are packed into one premises or one building or one housing, because of the fact that most of them, are from the lower strata of society. So they would want to share accommodation so that they can share the burden of the costs over there. These are also expensive places to live in, so it's not easy to get accommodation. So maximum number of them try to stay in a certain facility, share the facility so that they can save as much money and send it back home. So that's how they function generally. In addition to that, there's also the other angle that's being looked into, whether they were forced to stay in such kind of a shelter where, there are too many people packed into a facility and they're living in a dangerous condition. So these are the two angles that are being looked at. As far as Kerala Chief Minister is concerned, yes, of course, he's written to the External Affairs Ministry, and it is ascertained that there are multiple casualties from Kerala, at least initial reports indicating that 1/4 of them who have lost their lives, that is 10 or 12 of them who have lost their lives, are from Kerala. That's the initial information we have. And also some of the names of the deceased have been released, and also the districts from where they hail. That's also come out at this point in time. But as far as the building, what we know right now is that the building is linked to a construction group known as NTBC Group. But of course, what remains to be seen is regarding the ownership of that building, and whether that building, they had any role in ensuring that, so many people are packed dangerously into a closed space and they were living there. Because when we look at the sequence of events, it was not just the blaze, it was also the asphyxia, right? It was at 6 in the morning, so these are probably workers. They would have worked night shifts or whatever. And then at 6 a.m. when this blaze broke out, there were some people who had panicked and they had to actually jump out of the windows, and that claimed many people's lives. Right. In addition to that, there was also the case of people suffering asphyxia. They were inhaling the toxic fumes, and that is said to have led to the death of many people. So this is a tragedy that's being taken seriously equally by the Kuwait government. And they're also probing if there's any wrongdoing from any of the authorities or the officials on their side, because, they were packed dangerously. These people, poor migrant workers, were packed dangerously in a small shelter, and then they are now, victims in this unfortunate tragedy for no fault of theirs.
Right, Siddharth. Thank you so much for joining us on the show with your insights. We'll, of course, be tracking this unfortunate fire tragedy in Kuwait very closely here.